When mechanic Calvin Pierce found a 14-year-old girl alone and soaked on Interstate 80, he broke the law. He took her in, shielded her from $1 million police search, and grew attached to her as if she were the daughter he had lost 10 years earlier. But why did Calvin risk prison to protect this stranger? The answer, hidden in an old fertility clinic file, is so unbelievable you'll have to watch until the end to believe it. The storm had just passed when Calvin Pierce spotted her, a tiny figure, standing alone on the side of the rain-drenched road, shivering her little red shoes soaked in mud. The sun was fighting its way through dark clouds, casting pale light over the drenched countryside. He was driving back from his night shift at the mechanic shop, eyes half-lidded from exhaustion when he almost missed the small shape waving weakly from the roadside. He hit the brakes hard, heart pounding. The child couldn't have been older than 14. Her dress, once pink, was now strewn with dirt, and her tangled hair clung to her tear-stained cheeks. Before Calvin could even ask, she whispered, "I can't find my mommy." Those words hit him harder than any storm. He saw the fear in her wide hazel eyes, the kind of fear that only comes when a child has been alone too long. Without hesitation, Calvin opened the truck door, wrapped his old jacket around her, and said softly, "You're safe now, sweetheart. I'll help you find her." The girl said her name was Maya. She didn't remember where she was from, just that her mommy's car went boom, and there was fire everywhere. Calvin's stomach twisted. He turned on the radio, listening to news bulletins, and sure enough, there was a luxury car accident on Interstate 80. One woman missing, possibly swept into nearby river. No names yet, no survivors confirmed. Calvin's hands trembled slightly as he drove home with Maya asleep beside him. He couldn't stop glancing at her small hand resting on his seat. His own daughter, Clara, had been just about Maya's age before she passed away from leukemia 10 years ago. The ache never truly left him. It only hid beneath the noise of his daily survival. Seeing Maya was like seeing a ghost of what could have been. His modest wooden house stood at the edge of a small town, humble but warm inside. He made her cocoa, wrapped her in a blanket, and watched as she slowly relaxed. There was something about her, a gentle spirit, a trust that didn't match the terror she'd been through. He couldn't just take her to the authorities yet, not when she was shaking and calling out for her mother in her sleep. So he promised himself just one night until he could figure out who she was. Morning came, with golden light streaming through the curtains. Maya woke, rubbing her eyes and smiling when she saw Calvin making pancakes. "You're funny," she giggled as he flipped one too high and it landed on the counter. For the first time in years, Calvin laughed, real unguarded laughter. He had forgotten what that felt like. 13 days turned into a week. The police had issued a missing person alert for a young girl possibly linked to an accident involving business executive Vivian Vance, but so far there were no leads. Calvin called the station, leaving a message about Maya, but never got a response. The small town sheriff's department was often swamped, and he figured the big city accident might not have been linked to them. But deep down, he hesitated. A part of him didn't want to let Maya go. He had started to tuck her in at night, listen to her talk about her dreams of painting, and even take her to the park where she'd run barefoot through the grass. She made the walls of his quiet home come alive. Again, Clara's old toys, dusty and forgotten, found new life in Maya's hands. The laughter in the house, her laughter, and filled the emptiness that had haunted him for so long. Yet guilt tugged at him. He wasn't her father. Somewhere out there, a mother was probably crying for her lost child. One chilly evening, as he fixed a broken shelf, Maya sat beside him and asked, "Do you think my mommy is looking for me?" Calvin's throat tightened. "I'm sure she is," he said gently, "and until she finds you, I'll keep you safe." But fate had its own plans. The next morning, the knock on the door came like thunder. 2 men in black suits stood outside, their polished cars gleaming in the sunlight. "Mr. Calvin Pierce," one asked sternly. "We're with the Vance Foundation Security Division. We have reason to believe you're in possession of a missing child, Vivian Vance's daughter." Calvin froze. In the doorway behind him, Maya peeked out, her small fingers clutching his sleeve. The taller man's eyes softened slightly. At the sight, "We're not here to cause trouble," he said quietly. "Mrs. Vance has been looking for her nonstop since the accident." Before Calvin could respond, a sleek black SUV pulled up behind them. The door opened and out stepped a woman with trembling hands and eyes red from sleepless nights. She was stunning even in her disarray, wearing an oversized coat and no makeup, her blonde hair tied back in haste. The moment she saw Maya, her breath caught and tears flooded her eyes. "Maya," she whispered, collapsing to her knees. "Oh, my baby." Maya hesitated, staring at her, as though unsure she was real. Then, in a flash, she ran forward. "Mommy," she cried, burying her face in the woman's arms. The sight made Calvin's chest ache. Joy for them, but a deep ache for himself. He turned away, pretending to busy himself with his tools. But then he heard Vivian's voice, warm, broken, and shaking. "You saved her, didn't you?" Calvin turned. "I just did what anyone would have done." But Vivian shook her head. "No, not anyone. Most people would have called the police and walked away. You cared. You stayed." Her men briefed her quietly, explaining that Calvin had housed Maya safely and reported her, but never got a reply. Vivian nodded, her gaze never leaving him. "I want to thank you properly," she said, reaching into her purse. But Calvin stopped her. "You don't owe me anything, ma'am. Just take her home." He thought that was the end of it. But 5 days later, another knock came, gentler this time. When he opened the door, Vivian stood there alone, holding a small box. "Can I come in?" she asked. They sat at his worn wooden table where the faint scent of pancakes lingered. She looked around, eyes softening at the cozy simplicity of his home. "Maya talks about you nonstop," she said with a faint smile, "about the man who made her pancakes and told her bedtime stories about stars." Calvin smiled faintly. "She's a special kid." Vivian hesitated, then opened the box. Inside was a framed photo, a man holding a baby. "That's my husband," she said quietly. "He died 10 years ago. Plane crash." Her eyes glistened. Maya was all I had left. When the accident happened, I thought I'd lost her, too. I couldn't bear it. Calvin nodded slowly. He knew that pain, the kind that hollowed you out. But then she said something that made his breath catch. "There's something you need to know, Calvin, about Maya." She took a deep breath. "Before my husband died, he told me something. He wasn't sure, but he believed Maya wasn't biologically ours. We used a donor when I couldn't conceive, and he said he'd done it anonymously. But recently I got the DNA results back." She looked straight into Calvin's eyes. "The donor was you." The world seemed to stop spinning. Calvin stared at her, stunned. That can't be." But Vivian slid a paper across the table. "The DNA confirmation. I traced it back. your file from a fertility clinic. 18 years ago when you were in college. You donated once. Yeah, said it was to help pay for your mom's surgery. You probably forgot. Calvin felt the air leave his lungs. He looked at the paper. Again, then at the photo of Maya smiling, beside Vivian. His hands trembled. You mean she's... Yes, Vivian whispered. She's your daughter. For a long moment, there was only silence. The kind that wrapped around two broken souls, who both lost too much. Tears welled in Calvin's eyes as he tried to process it. The little girl who had called for her mother in her sleep, the one who brought laughter back into his home, was his own blood. Vivian's voice softened. I didn't tell you right away because I wasn't sure you'd want anything to do with us. But when I saw how Maya looked at you, I knew she felt something too. Something deeper. Calvin leaned back, wiping his eyes. I don't know what to say. Then don't, she said gently. Just be in her life if you want to. 8 months passed and the bond grew naturally. Vivian would bring Maya to visit every weekend. They'd go fishing, paint together, and laugh until sundown set. Over the hills, Maya started calling him Dad. Calvin, giggling every time. Vivian watched quietly, her heart healing bit by bit. But what touched Calvin most wasn't the discovery of blood. It was the discovery of hope. He had thought his heart was done, that he'd lost his chance of being a father. But life had found a way to return that gift in the most unexpected form. One evening, as the sky turned crimson, Vivian and Calvin stood by the porch watching Maya chase fireflies. You know, she said softly, when I lost my husband, I thought I'd never love anyone again. But life has a strange way of giving us back what we thought was gone forever. She looked at him meaningfully. Maybe this was meant to be. Calvin smiled, his gaze resting on Maya. Maybe it was the story of a man who found a lost girl and discovered his own daughter. Spread quietly through the town. People whispered about fate, about how kindness can change lives in ways no one sees coming. Calvin never sought attention. All he cared about was that Maya was safe and that somehow he'd been given a second chance to be the father he always wanted to be. As the three of them watched the stars rise at night, Maya pointed upward and whispered, Dad, do you think the stars are where angels live? Calvin smiled, eyes glistening. I think the stars are love. Calvin had lost his first daughter, and only now did he realize that life had been saving a second miracle for him all along, a gift of love in the midst of chaos. He found Maya, not by accident, but because fate led him exactly where his heart needed to be. What destiny took away, it returned in the purest form. If you believe that love always finds a way, even if it takes years and hides beneath the stars, leave your thoughts in the comments. Your story of hope could be the next one. To never miss the incredible twist of fate we reveal every week, subscribe to the channel now and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching.